This is the history of Iran's nuclear program. In the 1950s, the Americans actually give Iran its first nuclear reactor. Back then, the West had a good relationship with Iran's leader, the Shah. Iran promises it only wants nuclear energy, but then Iran's enemy, Israel, acquires a nuclear weapon. All of a sudden, the Iranians start rethinking the whole not wanting a nuke thing. The Shah is overthrown in 1979 in the Islamic Revolution, and cooperation with the West on developing nuclear energy ends. At first, the new ruler, Ayatollah Khomeini, doesn't make a nuclear program much of a priority. But then another of Iran's enemies, Saddam Hussein, starts trying to get a nuke. Hussein's Iraq isn't just Iran's neighbor, it's been at war with Iran for the last decade in a brutal struggle that's resulted in over 1 million dead. So Iran decides that if its two biggest enemies in the region are going to have nuclear weapons, then it needs them too. In 1989, Ayatollah Khamenei, the supreme leader who is still in charge today, comes to power and is more open than his predecessor to go for the bomb. By the mid-90s, it's clear to the Americans that Iran is quickly expanding its nuclear enrichment capabilities, even though they're telling the world they want a Middle East free of nukes. So, President Clinton begins sanctioning Iran by prohibiting any US entity from trading with the Iranians. A sanction, as defined by the Merriam-Webster dictionary, is an action that is taken or an order that is given to force a country to obey international laws. Fast forward to 2002, an opposition group within Iran reveals intelligence that the nuclear program is far more advanced than anyone thought. But American President George W. Bush pretty much ignores the emerging Iranian threat, because his administration is preoccupied with developing its campaign of lies to convince the world that Iraq has weapons of mass destruction, to justify its desired invasion and takedown of Saddam Hussein. In 2005, as a direct consequence of the American aggression in the region, the hyper-conservative Mahmoud Ahmadinejad becomes president of Iran. He defiantly calls for the expansion of Iran's nuclear program, calls for Israel to be wiped off the map, and calls the Holocaust a myth. The Israelis are now feeling threatened and growing impatient by the slow response to the Iran problem, so they begin planning an air attack against Iran's nuclear facilities. To his credit, Bush realizes this would create chaos, so he stops the Israelis from acting out their plans. But he also brings them in on a top-secret plan the Americans are almost ready to launch, called Olympic Games, a cyber attack operation targeting vulnerabilities in the security of the computer systems at Iran's most important nuclear facility. Then, the games begin. The centrifuges at Natanz start having a variety of problems, but the Iranian engineers at the plant have no idea they're under attack, as the breakdowns are designed to seem to them like random accidents. In 2009, President Obama takes office and chooses to continue Olympic Games at Bush's urging. But Obama also starts new, high-level talks with the Iranians, but progress on the diplomatic front is slow at first. The Iranians simply don't know what they're in for with Obama. The countries joining the Americans in talks are the 4 other permanent members of the UN Security Council: China, France, Russia, and the United Kingdom, plus Germany. This group is referred to as the P5+1 in international relations. Ahmadinejad wins re-election, but many Iranians think the vote is rigged and that Mir Hossein Mousavi is the real winner. Millions across the country hit the streets in protests that last 7 months. The government resorts to extreme violence and a crackdown on human rights. This Green Movement, as it's known, is the largest civil uprising in Iran since the revolution 30 years earlier that brought the current regime to power. Meanwhile, the NSA and Israel's cyber attack unit are creating a special code for the Olympic Games program, featuring a computer worm targeting the most important centrifuges at Natanz. Simultaneously, copies of the malware escape Natanz and begin replicating quickly across the internet and gain the name Stuxnet. Obama makes the tough call that it's now or never and authorizes Olympic Games a knockout blow. More than 1,000 critical centrifuges proceed to fail at Iran's prized nuclear facility at Natanz, setting back the country's pursuit of a bomb by up to 2 years. Then, 2 Iranian nuclear scientists have their cars bombed. The Israelis are widely suspected. The Western alliance then cuts Iran off from the international financial system. The US goes further and blocks Iranian oil exports. The UN then reports it suspects Iran is developing parts for a nuclear warhead at a military base. Around this time, a stealth US spy drone crashes 140 miles inside Iran's border with Afghanistan. And a month later, another top Iranian nuclear scientist is assassinated. But Iran keeps increasing its uranium enrichment capabilities, even though it's now paying a high cost. It's losing $8 billion a month because the EU is now helping to make sure it can't deliver its most valuable commodity, oil, to market. Dozens of massive Iranian oil barges appear all along its coast, acting as holding containers while the government scrambles to build more storage facilities on land. In August, the UN reports an underground nuclear site deep inside a mountain, which makes it much harder for Iran's enemies to attack, is almost operational. More sanctions hit the Iranian banking sector, and the economy begins to buckle. Iran's currency, the rial, has dropped 40% in value. People now have to carry huge wads of cash just to buy bread and milk. But the government stubbornly declares it will install even more centrifuges that are much more powerful than what it currently has. Meanwhile, quality of life is continuing to deteriorate as the government loses confidence it can keep the cost of basic goods from skyrocketing even further. And there's a run on Iranian supermarkets as people try to buy up everything they can get their hands on. Around this time, John Kerry takes over for Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State, becoming the leading US negotiator with Iran. The situation is coming down to the wire, as the International Atomic Energy Agency reports Iran's nuclear program is dangerously close to crossing a red line that Israel has laid down as a trigger for an attack. So the US goes after the cash of Iran's top officials, including the supreme leader himself, that they have stashed in banks all around the world. Then, in June, Hassan Rouhani, a moderate, is overwhelmingly elected president of Iran. He campaigned on repairing ties with the West and negotiating to get the sanctions removed. Rouhani and Obama exchange letters and eventually talk by phone. After this historic chat, Obama tells reporters he believes there is a basis for an agreement. Next, a major breakthrough. Iran agrees to temporarily freeze its entire nuclear program to give the negotiators room to reach a deal. Throughout 2014, Iran agrees step by step to dismantle parts of its program, like shipping the vast amount of its nuclear fuel out of the country. And finally, the big news. The negotiators announced they have hammered out the major framework for a comprehensive deal to roll back Iran's nuclear program and guarantee it can only be used for peaceful purposes. It should be finalized by June 30th, 2015. These are its terms. For the next 10 years, Iran will reduce the number of centrifuges enriching uranium from nearly 20,000 to just over 6,000. And these will all be Iran's first-generation type that have had significant performance problems over the years. For a nuclear bomb, you need uranium enriched above 90%. Iran has been processing it to 20%. With this deal, it will not enrich above 3.7%, and it will drastically cut the amount of this material in its possession to just 300 kilograms from the current level of 10,000 kilograms. Both limitations will last for at least 15 years. The core of the heavy water reactor at Arak that was capable of producing a significant amount of weapons-grade plutonium will be destroyed or removed from the country. Plutonium is the other fuel you can use to make a nuclear bomb. And all the remaining plutonium will be shipped out of the country as well. The reactor will then be converted to research for peaceful purposes. All of this will push back Iran's breakout timeline, which is the time it would take for Iran to create enough nuclear material for a bomb, from its current level of 2 to 3 months to well over a year. The nuclear watchdog will have continuous monitoring and access to all of Iran's nuclear facilities, including its crown jewel enrichment facility at Natanz. Its facility at Fordo will stop enriching uranium completely and will be converted to a research center. The inspectors will use the most modern, up-to-date surveillance technologies available. Inspectors will also have access to all of Iran's uranium mines and mills for 25 years. Iran will completely stop manufacturing new centrifuges and will allow inspectors to constantly watch over the centrifuges it removes from Fordo and Natanz. Any sale of nuclear-related materials and technology to Iran for its continuing nuclear energy program will be monitored and have to gain approval through a specific purchasing process. If the IAEA wants to investigate any suspicious sites beyond those it has regular access to, it will have to seek approval from Iran. But if Iran refuses, they don't have the final word. An independent body will decide whether it must comply with the search request. This is one of the things that still needs to be worked out, but according to the US, the sanctions will only begin to be lifted after Iran has taken all of the key steps to rolling back its program and allowing IAEA full access. Even after Iran fully complies and the sanctions are lifted, if the West determines Iran has changed its mind and is pursuing a nuclear weapon again, it can easily snap the sanctions back into place. The presence of inspectors throughout Iran's nuclear supply chain will make any non-compliance easily detectable nearly instantly, allowing for a swift response. The deal with Iran to roll back its nuclear program is good for everyone and should be implemented as soon as possible. It's good for Iran because its economy was being destroyed by the Western-imposed sanctions and its people were suffering. Supreme Leader Khamenei saves face. Even though he gave up the ability to build a bomb, Iran gets to keep enriching uranium to low levels with its nuclear energy program. The entire Middle East region will be more secure. Iran's push for a bomb was making a number of its neighbors want to nuke too. The deal is great for Israel because they eliminate the Iranians' ability to bomb them with a nuclear weapon. It's good for President Obama because it vindicates his belief in the effectiveness of well-crafted American-led diplomacy. Without putting a boot on the ground or firing a single missile, the Americans and their allies got exactly what they wanted. Iran's pursuit of a nuclear weapon will stop. This result shows that if world powers cooperate, they can convince a country that acquiring a nuclear weapon is simply not worth the costs. Remember, the Iranians are getting no reward for their pursuit of the bomb. They were only punished for it. Now, compare this approach with the completely failed strategy Bush tried, hoping that his extreme use of force against Iraq would frighten the Iranians into giving up the bomb. Of course, it did the exact opposite. It scared them into wanting nukes for self-defense, so the US or Israel couldn't make good on its threats and attack them too. While there is still a chance Iran could back out of this deal and keep pursuing a bomb, that is highly unlikely. If they did that, the Khamenei regime would lose any of the little credibility it has left. Its economy would continue to collapse under the weight of the sanctions. It would likely face immediate military strikes that would be fairly justified by the West, and its people, convinced that economic relief had been coming thanks to a deal, would probably revolt with even more conviction than they did 5 years ago when millions of Iranians took to the streets against the rigging of President Ahmadinejad's re-election. So, assuming Iran signs the deal as negotiated, looking down the road, there are a number of factors that make Iran unlikely to pursue a bomb again when this agreement starts to expire in 2025. The development of renewable, safer energy alternatives should make everyone's pursuit of nuclear fission a lot less likely. Time and circumstance will have also moved Iran further away from the defiant approach to the nuclear issue, but memories of the cost to its society for going against the world and pursuing a bomb will still be fresh in the minds of the Iranian people. Also, the sheer pace of global change, driven by the internet and other technological developments, will continue to erode the power of both the Ayatollah and the Islamic hardliners who support him, so the current regime may not even exist in a decade. That's my take on the history of Iran's pursuit of a nuclear weapon and how it was resolved. What do you think? Thanks for watching. Make sure to hit that like button because it really helps us out. If you want to watch more TDC, click on the screen to see our look at 10 promising energy sources of the future, or our examination of the 10 biggest mega projects under construction around the world, or visit our channel for our newest video. And if you enjoyed this video, we've worked out what I think is a pretty good deal for you to receive a free audiobook from audible.com through the link in the description below. You sign up for a free 30-day trial of their service. You have to put in your credit card, but you can cancel at any time. And for signing up, Audible will throw a little bit back our way, so you will get to feel good about contributing to help us keep making these kinds of videos. Plus, you get a free audiobook, like the highly rated Atomic Awakening, a new look at the history and future of nuclear power. Until next time, for the Daily Conversation, I'm Bryce Plank.